Well, I was born in Birmingham. I was born in Birmingham. Yeah. And then I grew up in Hereford, which is on the border of Wales. And I went to Hereford College of Art for 5 years. And I tried very hard to get into the Royal College of Art in London. And I exceeded in the textiles department. And there I studied 3 years, and it was an industrial design school. But when I left Hereford College of Art, I had already studied for my diploma script writing and weaving. When I realized I could make a piece of cloth by just taking various threads, that was what I focused on. And when I went to the Royal College, it was an industrial design school, 3 years, and I was trained to design textiles for industry. They had a whole range of damask, jacquard looms. We wove lengths of fabric. We had incredible professors that came, lecturers that came, painters that came and gave lectures. And it was the experience that molded my life. So the Royal College was really a privilege and an incredible experience. I cannot understress the importance of textiles in whatever form. It's very, very important. And I think people have to be educated to a certain degree, because when they are critical of fabrics or art or craft, they don't realize when they look around them how much they consume that is produced in fabric, in yarn, printed fabric, woven fabric, upholstery, wear, apparels. I mean, it's there. It's developed, but it's never ended. It's very important. And also, tapestries warm a building. They are very sound absorbing, but they give warmth to a building. And I mean, the castles in ancient history had huge tapestries. And I must add that the first thing a country does when they're at war is protect their art objects. I've had to work hard to have my work accepted, mainly because tapestries here are not recognized as part of the art education, I think, being New Brunswick. It is changing. There are some outstanding artists now who are having their work, whether it's quilt form or applied arts in cloth, recognized and respected. But for me, it's always been difficult. I have had to work extremely hard, and I've had to diverse from my work, become a teacher, influence my students, but it hasn't been easy. Sometimes you get an invitation, or one gets an invitation to produce a piece of work, and George Fry and Kathy Hooper decide to have this exhibition on the written word. And suddenly I realized that I had important people in my life who probably passed away and didn't have a moment to tell those people what they thought about them, or how they felt, or even leave things for them. So I decided to make this creation called a mezuzah. Now, traditionally, Jewish mezuzahs would have a blessing by the rabbi, and that would be in the container. I decided to write on parchment to each member of my family at that time, given divorces, separations, everything else at that year, which didn't exist. I managed to write 20 mezuzahs, write 20 parchment papers, each one individually, maybe a little poem, but what that person meant in my life. And I left to them, or I wrote down, an object that belonged to me. Didn't belong to my husband and myself, it belonged to me. And I said, I will leave you, say, my this book or this piece of jewelry or whatever. And each one was an individual mezuzah. So how do you link each mezuzah together like a family? So I wove these strips. Since I'm a weaver, I wove these strips. with extended, gold thread extended at the corners, and then the mezuzahs fitted in those coils. And then I mounted it, and it went on exhibition, as I said, and then now it's hanging in our house. So when I depart, I will have left something very personal to my family. The tapestry that I did for Marysville Place, that was a challenge. I was approached by the department that was building or changing Marysville Place, and that Marysville Place was a cotton mill where Boss Gibson, he built it, and he also was responsible for a lot of buildings in Marysville. An extraordinary man, and he died destitute, which was very sad. But he had a house in Marysville with a glass floor at the top, which was his ballroom, and the history was very, very rich. So I did this tapestries, a series of 5 tapestries, depicting the history of Marysville. Boss Gibson, of course, was in the central panel with his house, and that I chose a different colouring to signify the significance of Boss Gibson. And all these tapestries were woven in cotton, because the cotton mill, cotton tapes, which I printed images on. And then I chose this mylar, a very fine plastic thread, which I wove these strips into. And when you go into Marysville, you look up and the images come and go because the mylar is reflecting. So sometimes you see a certain feature, whether it's the basket, not the basket, the milliners rather, who used to create all these hats, whether it's the first mayors, yes, maybe it's the basketball team, but you see these people come and go visually. So it's history, but it's ghosts from the past type of thing. So that's what I did for Marysville Mill. Rug hooking here is, it's new, I would say. It's not like it originated in England in the early 19th century. So it's a very historical part of England's or Europe's history. Comparatively, it's kind of new in New Brunswick by dates. I think it's an essential art form or craft that should be protected and documented and respected. The registry is extremely important, not only to the New Brunswick Museum, a form of education to students in higher learning, but it is, I can't overstress how important it is to document anything that's being created for history and respect the discipline of rug hooking. A virtual documentation accessible to anyone is extremely important. We cannot ignore the way that reference is used now. I am not educated as far as what is out there regarding promoting one's work on the web, but it is essential. That is the way people educate themselves now. It is essential that this is a virtual documentation, and I admire you for taking this step and encourage every effort to be made to maintain this. I think the older mats tell an important part of New Brunswick history. There's no doubt about that. They record a way of life which is not really documented or illustrated in other means. I think it's extremely important. I think the history is what we have to respect and document